Hey everyone, welcome back to Rationable. I'm Abhijit, and this is the channel where we fact check the world. Now, I've got a few Ask Me Anything questions that I got a while back. I did a shoot for it, and I tried to publish it, and I screwed up. So, this is my second attempt, and hopefully, nothing will screw up this time. So, let's get right into it. First question is from Samir. He asks, "What to what extent can a placebo make you feel well? Is it so that it can change the medical reports as well? Is it possible that my MRI or CT may improve due to a placebo taken by me?" Now, this is a very interesting question, which is something a lot of scientists are actually wondering about right now because we don't completely understand the placebo effect yet. Why the body responds that the way it does. Now, if you don't know what a placebo is, it is a sugar pill or basically an inactive or a substance which won't affect you with whatever condition you might have. And it's used as a control for a lot of studies. So basically, you have a placebo controlled study, which is a part of a randomized controlled study. And a placebo is used to give to one group where we know that we are not giving them any substance that is actually going to change their condition, no matter what it is. And on the other side, we're using the actual medicine or treatment that we're trying to test against it. And there will be a certain percentage of people who will feel that the medicine does affect them, but that is usually between 40 to 50%, but it depends from case to case and the condition that we're talking about. Now, one thing we do know is that placebos do have a very low effect and it's very temporary. They usually are, when it comes to rather vague or non-specific symptoms like, certain pain, maybe a headache, maybe a shortness of breath, maybe just a feeling of discomfort. These can definitely be subdued because a lot of these are psychosomatic. So basically, your mind is making your body think that you're feeling unwell. And if you're taking a medicine, whether it's a pill, whether it's a placebo injection, where they're basically just injecting you with salt water or something of that sort, like a saline solution, whether it's even a placebo surgery, for a lot of people, it is something that makes them feel or believe that they're feeling better. But I don't think it's going to be an effect that is going to be so dramatic that is going to actually change your medical outcome. Placebos don't actually have any medical use other than to subdue maybe psychosomatic symptoms, that you might be thinking yourself into, or maybe you're stressed out and you taking a pill makes you feel that feel less stressed, and maybe that does have an actual effect of lowering your blood pressure, or lowering your heart rate, or lowering your breathing rate, or something of that sort. So it can have these kinds of effects, but effects that are only limited to a certain range of effects. You know what I mean? So no, I don't think a placebo. I'll have to look into this further, and maybe I can make an entire video on a placebo. And if you want that, please write it in the comments and let me know. But I would definitely like to make an entire video on what placebos can and can't do. But I don't think, as of now, that they would have as profound an effect as to actually change your medical outcome, especially when you're talking about an MRI or a CT scan or something of that sort. Now, the second question from Samir, he's asking, are people born with coffee taste buds? Or is it something that you can develop over time? If not, then how can you become a coffee connoisseur? Now, I love that question because I am a huge coffee fan. I have to have my 2 cups or double shots every day. And the better it tastes, the better it is. So, but it's a very interesting question. We don't actually have coffee taste buds. We do have bitter, and we actually have a lot larger range of flavors that we can perceive than just the 5 or 6. Those are broadly that, but that is just on the tongue. A majority of the sense of flavor that we have actually comes from our smell. The aroma of coffee is something that you really identify with. That is something that we all love, at least a lot of people love. So when you're drinking coffee, there are other taste buds which are activated, but a majority of the flavor you get from coffee is from your sense of smell. So these days, like especially when we're talking about things like COVID, and you suddenly lose your sense of taste and smell suddenly, it becomes that is primarily because the nerve receptors, the receptors in your nose get affected by COVID and therefore stop functioning properly. So therefore you stop smelling things, and also in the process stop being able to taste things as well as you used to. So that's the way it is. It's mostly smell. So enjoy your coffee. Now, Samir's next question is space dump. What do you do with it? And what's the best way to reduce and recycle there, that is in space? And that is something that almost every country's scientists, at least some scientists in every country, are trying to figure out right now. There is a lot of space junk up in orbit that we haven't been careful about, and they're orbiting this world right now and can be a potential danger to future missions. And we don't have an answer to that right now. So I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. There are lots of ideas, there are lots of experiments happening, but we just don't know yet how to solve that problem. I hope somebody figures it out soon. The next question is from Anzal, and he asks, what keeps me motivated? And to be honest, I'm not motivated 100% of the time. There are lots of times when I feel like I'm just a drop in the ocean, one voice in the cosmic fugue. But I even just one conversation or one person who seems more interested in science or is starting to question what they believe, even that one person helps motivate me. So, and even when it comes to other critical thinkers, other rationalists, other skeptics, like I was speaking to a person who's become a friend of mine now, who is on Reddit by the name of Nuance and Complexity. Speaking to him and speaking to other people like him, and meeting other skeptics and talking to them really keeps me motivated, because it kind of makes me feel like, yeah, I'm on the right track, and we need to change minds, and we need to fight misinformation and bad information and bad science that's out there, pseudoscience as well, because these aspects, these fields of knowledge are extremely important when it comes to helping us make decisions in our day-to-day lives. Because if we can't critically think about what we encounter in our lives and understand what is fiction and what isn't, then we will end up making bad decisions, whether it's about medicines, whether it's about money, investments, exercises, diets, even astrologers and whatnot. If I can make even a slight difference in somebody else's life and way of thinking, that's what motivates me the most. So if something like that's happened to you, please let me know in the comments and keep me going. Kalyan asks, what was your success rate with convincing people who were on the polar opposite side of rationality? And I honestly don't know, because there are lots of conversations that I have online on Facebook, in the Facebook group we have, and I'm not really sure exactly how many people are being positively affected or whose minds I have changed completely. I'm sure there are some out there. There have been some incidences when I have managed to get a person to at least think about their position, I think. But I honestly don't know. Uh, I don't think I've succeeded, but I'm going to keep going until I at least come up with somebody who might have changed their way of thinking, or basically change their minds about something. I'm not into changing everybody's minds. I'm not a contrarian of any sort, but hopefully it will happen soon, someday. When was the time when you changed your mind when somebody made a very rational argument with a previously held belief that you had? Now, that I can answer because I can only speak for myself. Now, I've talked a lot about the ketogenic diet and my process of, going through a period of time that I actually believe that the ketogenic diet worked. I used to talk about it all the time with a lot of people, and my brother, who is a bit of a fitness freak, and has has a very tight control on his diet when he needs to be, but he's never really that out of shape. So, you know. But he once told me, he's like, that's just crap. What you're saying is crap. You just need this much protein in your system, and you need to have a balanced diet, and you can eat everything, but you have it in moderation, and that's how you lose weight. And I refused to believe him at the time. But I but it did plant that seed of doubt in my mind. I'm like, why are all the sources I'm looking at saying exactly the opposite? And it's a tough thing to do, to kind of reevaluate what you believe, because I was really entrenched in that belief system. But after looking around and doing a lot of research and reading up on more conventional diets, and reading an audiobook actually called Nutrition Made Simple, which I found on Audible. I'm not a sponsor yet. But that's when I started realizing that maybe there isn't as much to the ketogenic diet as I thought. So I eventually came to a position where I kind of discarded that belief. Oh, and another source, a resource I would cite that got me into that position was BioLane. The BioLane podcast is excellent. You should check out the BioLane YouTube channel. I'll link it below. But they have excellent science-based information on nutrition and exercise, and you should definitely check them out. They helped me a lot in when I was looking around for this information. So Kalyan has one more question. Why do people hold on to their beliefs? They identify with it so strongly. Why is it so hard to sell rationality? I wish I knew. Honestly, I think there are a lot of aspects to critical thinking. And it's very hard to think critically, because it's much easier to just conform to your own confirmation biases and conform to the beliefs that you have been brought up with, that you've never had to question your entire life. And it is much harder to challenge that and prove yourself wrong so that you can believe something that is true. And I think that is essentially why it's so hard to sell rationality, because it's not something that comes naturally to human beings. We have evolved our biases, we have evolved our logical fallacies. These are some things that are ingrained in us, that are built into us so that we maintain our status quo, that we maintain the belief systems that we have, and that we don't question them. To step outside that is extremely hard. And to question yourself and to falsify the beliefs you hold consistently is not easy at all. And that is something I've had to go through, and I'm still going through. We all go through it every single day, where I have had to question my own beliefs and combat them, and I find support for them, or find some way to refute them. Basically, looking for evidence one way or the other. Right. So now with the next question. And the reason why you see me in a different shirt and a different haircut is because this is like a week later. And for some reason, all this footage was just gone from my camera. So I'm doing this again. Hopefully, this time it works out. All right. So let's get to the next question. So Chaitali asks, why the name Rationable? Play on words? And that is absolutely right. I This is a play on words. Actually, I took the word reasonable and rational and stuck them together to make rationable. And it just so happened that I think on the freedictionary.com, it actually said that it was a word and an archaic term for, well, meaning exactly the same thing, the cross between being reasonable and rational. So I thought that was the perfect name for this platform, because I really want to encourage kind of reasonable, rational thought without letting our emotions get the better of us. Which is a great segue into the next question Chaitali asks, which is, what do you really want to do with it? Where do you want to take this? Which basically is that I want Rationable to be a platform where people can come, question claims that they've learned, test them, find facts behind them, discover the science behind everyday phenomenon, and find the answers for themselves. And also, I want to be a resource which provides reasonable, rational, science based explanations for a lot of the things that we see around us, whether it comes to medicine, whether it comes to alternative medicine, vaccines, fad diets, nutrition, and all other aspects of science that we may come across. So, I want this to be a resource that people can use to understand the world around them a little bit better, how to use science to think critically about these kinds of phenomenon, and how to question and have discussions about these phenomenon with other people. Do they agree? Do they disagree? Whatever it is, I want those conversations to be civil, to be good, to be productive, instead of all the backstabbing and name calling that goes on. I mean, you'd probably find a lot of that stuff in a lot of YouTube comment sections, which, as one person I quite respect once said, that YouTube comment section is where civil discussion goes to die. And I want to change that. I'm sure I wouldn't make too much of a dent on it because I've always already been subjected to that sort of thing. But I want Rationable to be a place where civil discussion goes to happen. And I essentially want this to be a platform where people can learn critical thinking for themselves and apply it in their own lives. So thanks very much for the question, Chaitali. Akankshi asks, how do you go about your research with respect to each topic, like from idea conception to research to back your arguments? Any sources you can quote? That's a great question, actually. So when I figure out a topic that I want to know more about and what I want to write about or make a video about, I already have a long list of topics that I'm interested about. Whether it comes to diets, I'm more interested in the biological aspects of our lives, so the human body, medicine, food, exercise, etc. So I don't look like I do much exercise, but you know what I mean. But these things have always intrigued me. These are the kinds of subjects that I've been fascinated by since I was since I was a kid, since I was in school. So when I identify one of these, I start with doing some basic preliminary research, which basically is Wikipedia, which is always a good first step. I go read the Wikipedia page. I follow all the links from the references and the citations, and I start reading those articles, which goes to the next step. Then I look up popular comments and claims based on that topic. So, for example, if I was to cite the example of the ketogenic diet article, which I have on the website, rationable.com, I had gone through it myself. So this was primarily based on my own experiences. So I first started looking up the topic of what is a ketogenic diet. I just wanted to start all the way from scratch. I didn't want to pretend to know anything about it. I wanted to start all the way from scratch. I started looking it up, reading, found a couple of really good articles in my preliminary research, and then went into all the citations that those articles went into and referred to. So then I read the studies, and well, studies like randomized control trials are not easy to understand, and they're not always perfect. There are flaws in them, they are fallible, they can be manipulated, but it is a process to be able to understand which ones are reliable and which ones aren't, especially if they're cited in reliable sources, like, for example, science based medicine or by registered dietitians. Like, for example, there's a great podcast called Sound Bites, which is also started by a registered dietitian. There's an Audible book called Nutrition Made Simple, which is also something I referred to. Biolane.com. Lane Norton is also quite a renowned science communicator when it comes to diet and nutrition, and he's a nutrition scientist who's done a lot of study in this field. So these are three or four mutually independent sources that aren't necessarily connected to each other. They're not talking to each other, but they all refer to the same studies. And these studies can also be done by independent researchers, by independent teams, and published in totally different journals. So the more diverse the sources you cite are, the better they are. And the more reliable that information is if the same information has been found by several competing or independent sources. That makes and if they all agree without having to necessarily agree by themselves mutually, that means that the information is most probably more reliable than other information you get. Now, if you're thinking about, say, a lot of different websites and a lot of different articles that all agree on some benefits of the ketogenic diet, are they citing those studies? Are they citing any scientific studies at all? Are they promoting other people who are promoting the ketogenic diet? So these are the kind of questions that you need to ask yourself, and you need to ask the information that you're looking at. And in the end, I essentially found that the ketogenic diet is a very neutral, I mean, it's not neutral, but the ketogenic diet is a niche diet. It is not magic. It is just another way to cut calories. I'll go into this more extensively, maybe in a different video. But they are essentially, it's just another way to cut down calories. It's not magic. But if it is suitable for certain people to be more consistent with their nutritional plan, then so be it. Use it. There's nothing wrong with the ketogenic diet. It can increase certain risks in people who maybe have diabetes or maybe have cholesterol problems. But on the whole, it's not bad. So, and this is something that I changed my mind completely in the process of looking this up, as I said earlier. So, yeah, so to kind of sum that up, I do some preliminary research where I just Google the topic and try and find good independent articles based on them. I try and dig deeper into the research that they cite. I try and read the research papers and try and understand and get as much information out of them as I possibly can, and see if they are all independent, if they are all non-affiliated, and that they all kind of agree on certain topics. So that's the basic process I go through. Then, of course, it's all the writing and kind of understanding and absorbing that information for myself. A few of the sites I'd like to recommend, as I said before, biolane.com is excellent. Lane Norton also has a YouTube channel called BioLane, so you should definitely check that out. And there's the podcast, which is the BioLane podcast, which is the physique science podcast, actually, by BioLane. Then you have Jeff Nippard, Jeff Nippard podcast, his YouTube channel, his website. He's got excellent information for that sort of thing. For alternative medicines and medicines, sciencebasedmedicine.org is great. Neurologica is another great blog which talks about science and pseudoscience in many of its aspects. Other than that, WHO and the CDC websites are very good on the whole. They are not to be trusted completely, but when representing the scientific consensus on certain topics like vaccines and certain diseases, these are definitely reliable sites that you can check out. Journals like Nature, Science, the Annals of the National Academy of Sciences, which is ANAS, I will not pronounce that, and JAMA. These are all extremely good websites. PubMed is a good, I would say, reference website for a lot of these studies, but just because it's on PubMed doesn't mean that the study is reliable. You have to see where that study was published, which it has to be published in a journal. PubMed is not a journal. It is just a collection. It's the Google of research studies, so to speak. And these are the places where you can go to find these studies and dig deeper. A lot of it is not easy. You do have to understand how research studies work. And if you want to know more about that sort of stuff, please put a comment below. I'll make a whole video on this, or maybe a series of videos, because you can't compress all of that information into one video. So these are a few of them. I've got a whole list of resources that you can check out, podcasts or books or websites, and YouTube channels that you can check out, which are on the Be Rationable website. So that's berationable.com. So please go there, check out the resources page, and you'll get a full list of a lot of the places that I go to again and again when I'm trying to figure out a topic. And that's it for now. I hope I answered all your questions satisfactorily. I know some of the answers even I don't know. But then that's the fun of AMAs, right? So if you have a question for Rationable, for me, about science, about critical thinking, about anything in your world, just put it down in the comments below. I'll try and get through to them and answer them whenever I can. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and be rational.